Okay, I'm gonna set my stopwatch here, so I don't go too far over. Oh wait, is that a countdown on the screen? Yeah, look at that. You guys knew I was coming. Okay. So Herb asked me to both just share a ministry update and to preach a message. So I'm going to do my best to do both. Raise your hand if you've never seen me here before ever. Like 3 of you? That's impressive. Okay. So most of you have seen me? You can nod your heads. Is it too early? Okay. We do church at night at Mount Rose, so maybe we're a little more awake by night. But we also do church in a circle, and it's a lot more like home church style. It's like a Bible study. So there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of interaction. So feel free to contribute so I don't feel awkward. Nod your heads a little more than you might usually. Other things you can do are, interject a little or, amen or whatever. Just so we feel like we're doing this as a family here and not, because I'm out of practice preaching to groups because we do it a little differently back home. So ministry update. Not a whole ton has changed since I was here a year ago. It was pretty much a year ago to this week that I was here at LedgeRock last. Our youth group has been going well. We have a picture of my family that'll go up there at some point. Our youth group has been going well. We have got that's a picture of my family. That's us. Thank you. Who said that? That's Nehemiah is 13. Bryn is 10. Rylan is 7. Quinn is 6. That's Kaylin, our redhead on the far right. She's 3. And Judah is 7 months. And that's my wife, April. I'm overcoming a cold, and they were starting to get the cold, and so we decided not to share that with all of you today. And so they decided to stay back today so they didn't bring the cold along the journey and pass it to all of LedgeRock and Ely. So that's us. And our youth group, our youth ministry has been one of our strongest ministries in our community, in our church for many years now. The thing to pray for with our youth ministry is patience. Our youth had notoriously been very quiet. They would sit there and we couldn't get them to say a word. We couldn't even tell if they were having a good time or not during games and activities. Our current youth group does not hold still at all. They are not quiet. They are the polar opposite of what we're used to. So on Wednesdays, we could use extra prayer for patience and grace. We are, for the first time ever, having to send students home for being a little too rowdy. And the amazing thing is, though, that even if we have to add some boundaries and add some discipline and say, hey, sorry, you got to take a week off, bud, they keep coming back. And we're really impressed that they keep showing up. We're there. We feed them at 6. We've been going through the book of James all year. Starting in the fall, we just go a little bit at a time, a verse or two at a time, just real slowly through James. And it's been wild to watch them process this. A lot of them are really loving it and just enjoying what the truths are in the book of James. Our church has been steady. We've added 1 or 2 new families in the last year. One family came in supporting from Grand Marais to drop in a little more frequently to help and just kind of be a presence in the church. And then another cool thing, I think I shared a story last time I was here about a baptism that was really unexpected. And another unexpected moment happened this last fall was our youngest, Judah. If you have a baby, if you have a little child and you know that sometimes just driving them around is all you can do to get them to sleep. April had a meeting that she couldn't not be at, and Judah needed to just be driven around for a little bit. So I was driving around to just let him sleep in the car, and I decided to go up to the Mount Josephine overlook. And while I was there for just moments, there was a kid who was in our youth group who was there named Trevor. Trevor lives in deep South Arkansas, but he grew up in Grand Portage, born and raised in Grand Portage. But he's a mechanic down there, a guy who's just tough, doesn't say much, doesn't show emotion. And I hadn't seen him in 10 years or more, maybe more. I get out of my car and he recognizes me, and I was like, so good to see him. And I went over and hugged him, and he has a wife now. He has 2 kids, and he brings his wife over, and he just puts her in front of me, and he goes, this is the reason I follow Jesus, is because of this guy. And I had no idea what Trevor was up to. He's not on social media. He doesn't say much. And his wife thanked me for the way that he honors her in their marriage, the way that he leads the family by going to church. And he said, yep, if it wasn't for this guy and the grace and the youth group and the stuff he poured into me, he goes, I wouldn't know Jesus. And so it's one of those moments where you wonder, okay, I got a crying kid, I'm going to drive around, and God uses the weirdest things. He was only up for 2 days visiting his family from the south, and then he was headed back down to do his life down there. And it was just an incredible moment to see him and to be wowed, like, wow, we just keep showing up on Wednesday. And sometimes when youth group is hard, you don't know the impact you're having for 10, 15 years. But you show up and you show Christ and you just keep being present, and God works in that. But yeah, the church is steady but growing. It's healthy. At least there's a good body of people who come and just want to know the Lord deeper together. I've got this website that I will try and maybe show you during Sunday school hour. I was introduced to it by the folks out at Chisholm Baptist Church. It's called Epistle. Has anyone ever heard of the Epistle website? No, me neither, up until about a couple months ago. There's a lot of things that I want to say more frequently about our ministry, but Facebook's not the place for it. Even if there are these private Facebook pages that I've seen some missionaries make, and even on those private Facebook pages, there's still too many things that can get out when you're asking for a heartfelt prayer request. So the folks at Chisholm Baptist introduced me to Epistle, and it's encrypted. The only way you can get to read what I'm posting is you've got to get a login, and then you get email updates, and it's an incredible app. You can put it right on your phone, and I can update right from my phone what God's doing, and you can see it right away, and I can have control over who's seeing it. So that's always been a big concern of ours, is saying too much. I was talking to Justin about that a little bit ago, is we want to be transparent, but we also don't want to say so much that somebody might find what we're saying offensive in a prayer request. So I'd like to get you guys on board with that, and you can sign up today before I leave to join on that Epistle website, and you can then log in. It sends you, every time there's an update, you get an email alert, and you can just read a short update about what God is doing and what we need prayer for. Currently, I'm supposed to be on a sort of sabbatical, but I've been preaching at a different church every week for about 6 or 7 weeks now. So I don't know if you'd call that a sabbatical. If you guys know Kenny Danielson, does anyone know Kenny here? A few of you. So Kenny was encouraged. I've never taken a sabbatical. I've been in ministry since 2006. So Kenny was like, we need you to take a sabbatical just to rest for your family, for all that's going on in your life. And so I'm doing it in 2 parts. This first part of my sabbatical, I'm just going around and sharing what God's doing to as many churches as I can. I told Kenny right away, I said, I can't stop youth group. I said, we've gained so much momentum going through James. We've seen so much spiritual growth that now's not the time for a sabbatical. He's like, well, when is the time? So July and August, we're going to, as a family, try and really take a break from ministry for those 2 months. But right now, we've got a guy at our church, his name's Steve, and Steve is preaching for me for all of March and April. Taking over so that I can go out and visit with churches, and then on Wednesday nights we still have youth group regularly. And so I don't know if we call it a sabbatical. The folks at Chisholm Baptist said, no, this is called home assignment. So maybe that's what this is. So, but overall ministry is going well. We're plugging away, we're showing up, we're being present. God's doing some really cool things. It's always a good reminder to us that our ministry is a slow ministry, and we get to slowly watch what God is doing. So our biggest thing that God has done, well, Herb said I could kind of preach on anything, and I said, would a sermon about 2 bears be okay? And he said, no, the bear place is nearby. It probably could turn into a visual, and He said, let's not. And I said, okay, no sermon on two bears, and making fun of bald prophets, I guess. So, he said, anything else but that. So I want to teach you or share with you what God's been teaching me about a real trial that we've been going through. If you've been following our journey the last year or so, we've really been struggling with this house project. It's been a wild struggle. It's been very weird. And I want to share with you what God has shown me in this and why I've had God really just blow my mind with his goodness in this process. So we'll get to that, but I'm going to start with some stories, and as we get to it, hey, would anyone in here be interested in reading some scripture today? That's what we do at our church. Yeah? Okay. So in a minute, we're going to go to Mark chapter 4. 36 through 41. Okay, we'll be there in just a minute. I'm going to share a little behind the scenes of this before we get to it. In 2013, I was in Uganda for 14 days with this Christian author and speaker, a guy named Bob Goff. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Bob, but we were there and we were seeing all sorts of ministries that Bob was a part of throughout Uganda. One of the ministries was a prison ministry. And we went to a prison that was built for 300 men in northern Gulu. And at that time, although built for 300 men, there was 980 men in that prison. Walking into that place, the first thing we noticed was like the abrupt smell of almost 1,000 men in a prison built for 300. The justice system in Uganda is very broken, and you can get thrown into prison for this very small accusations. If Mark was like, Jake was playing my favorite guitar, he shouldn't have been touching that, I'm really mad. Well, who saw that? Well, no one saw it, but I'm sure Jake was playing with it because it was real greasy afterwards. They could put me in prison. That's how the justice works in Uganda. Like, okay, now we got to wait for a system, a lawyer, a court date. And so a lot of these guys were in prison for the silliest offenses that nobody could prove, all because somebody said, that guy took my garden rake. And really, some of these we find out where these young men were dating ladies, and the dad was like, I don't really want him dating my daughter. And so they would make an accusation, and boom, they're in prison. And then they wait, and they wait, and they wait. And so we were sitting there, and this guy leading the prison tour, he goes, hey, someone should preach to these guys. We should do a sermon right now. And I was with 14 strangers, and they all looked at me and go, hey, he's a pastor, he should preach. And before I had time, this is about day 2 on the trip, I hadn't explained to him yet that I'm a pastor of a church that on like a really good Sunday, it's like 25 people. On an average Sunday, it's 15 to 20. On a smaller Sunday, it might be 8 to 10 of us. I didn't tell him yet that I'm not used to preaching to crowds of 1,000. And there was like this drawing of straws moment, but we didn't have to draw straws. I was the only pastor in the group. And so they said, he's probably like used to speaking. So they said, you got 5 minutes, prepare a sermon. You're going to speak to the prison. And this bell rang, and all these men sat shoulder to shoulder and filled this courtyard and said, okay, you're going to preach. And they didn't give me a megaphone or anything. It was this big, large courtyard. The men were just stacked in there. And I was like, what do I preach on? I have 5 minutes to like come up with this while the men are sitting down. And I don't know, the Lord put this on my heart. And so we're going to go ahead and jump into Mark chapter 4. Do you want to just read it from there really loud? Okay. 36, 35 through 41.
disciples were absolutely terrified. Who is this man? They asked each other. Even the wind and waves obey him.
So that's what I read to the crowd of the men, because many of these men were obviously not experiencing peace, because most of them, we were told, were in there for the silliest of accusations. And they could be in there for years and years. Now, there were guys in there for murder and real offenses, very real stuff. But the vast majority were in there for some of the silliest little things of taking a garden rake or playing someone's guitar when he shouldn't have, things like that. And so I wanted to give them a message about peace. That even though you're in this prison, probably wrongfully accused, peace is still present and peace is still obtainable. That Jesus shouts at I'm not going to try and recite the Hebrew here, but what Jesus yells at the sea is the equivalent to hush. And the whole sea. Now, we live right next to Lake Superior. Our house is on Lake Superior right now. And just the other day, during our big snowstorm, I saw waves that I don't know if I've ever seen that big. And to think that Jesus could look at that and be like, hush, and just done. That's the God we serve, and that's the peace that he can give out not just to the seas and to nature, but he can give that peace to us. Now, since I started ministry in 2006, but I didn't become the pastor. I didn't start preaching full-time at Mount Rose Community Church until 2010. And I can't tell you how many messages I have preached in my time of preaching nearly every Sunday for how many years now. How many messages I've preached about peace. How many messages I've preached on waiting on God's perfect timing. How many messages I've preached on trusting in him in all things. I've told so many people just, hey, wait on the Lord. Be strong and courageous. Take heart. Take courage. I've told people that those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength and mount up like eagles. And so I've said these words, but in recent times, in 22 and 23 and into 24, I was wondering, Lord, where's your peace? God, what's going on? And I'll tell you more about our house situation in a moment, but nothing had gone right. And I was telling my friend, he's the pastor at Emmanuel Baptist Church, I was telling him all of the things that have gone wrong. Currently, we're a family with 6 kids living in a double-wide trailer that we're renting as our house is being rebuilt. I'll tell you what, a double-wide is a little small for 6 kids, but we're making it work. And I was telling my friend, Pastor John, all these things that were not going well. And he just shouts, he goes, Jake, this is great news. And I'm not a violent person. And honestly, it really takes a lot for me just to get even like the littlest bit angry. But I just expressed to him all of the things that are not going well. And I kind of wanted to give him a little shoulder punch. And he said, this is great news, Jake, because do you know how many pastors preach about waiting on the Lord and they don't actually have to experience it? Do you know how many pastors preach about fully relying on Jesus to show up, but they don't have to experience it for themselves? He's like, you get to preach it and experience it. How cool is that? And I was like, it's terrible, John. I don't like this one bit. And he goes, no, it's awesome. And he was so enthusiastic. And at the time, I was a little mad. And John was right. God needed to put me through a season of challenge to be able to actually preach on God showing up, to actually be able to go, hey, I've experienced watching God show up through something that seemed unobtainable. We're in Ely, so I suspect that some of you guys have ever seen an animal in a trap. Yeah? Okay, a couple of you, I hope. If not, go on YouTube later. I'm not going to show a video of it. We don't have time for that. Go on YouTube and find a video of any animal in a trap. Sometimes they end differently than others, but if you watch a raccoon in a trap or a bobcat in a trap, sometimes it's a pretty terrifying sight, very scary. And sometimes as the person's even just trying to set the animal free, the animal doesn't get what's going on, right? It doesn't understand that the person standing there is trying to let it go. And so it just gets more riled up. It gets more angry. It feels backed into a corner because it doesn't know what's about to happen. And yet the person is trying to just let it calm down and set it free. I think in 23 and 24, I really think that's probably how I look to God. Fighting at him, snarling at him, backed into a corner. Really wondering, okay, God, where are you? And sometimes if you're the person opening that cage, it's best to just let that animal become completely and utterly exhausted before you set it free. And see, I thought that I was really good at surrender, and I thought that I was really good at letting go of things. See, for most of my life, if you knew me on a more personal level, you would know that things could go terribly wrong, and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I'm like, that's fine. We were driving our church bus to MSP one time, bringing a group of youth to, we were heading to Minneapolis to go on a flight to a missions trip to Mexico, and one of the tires on our church bus just fell off. It happens. Our buses run on prayers anyways on the res, so lots of things, really big things. Our church could share all these stories where these terrible things have happened, and they're like, you're not going to react? I'm like, it happens. And so this happening in my life with our house situation is the first time that something was happening that I couldn't shrug my shoulders and go, it happens. It was the first time where I couldn't just say, no big deal. And I was really struggling with it because I'm wired to just be like, that's okay. I hit a deer. It's okay. But things were not going according to our plans. It felt like I was failing my family. It felt like I was failing my children. Before we moved from one spot on the reservation to the other, I really prayed hard, and I prayed and I fasted, and I really felt like God was in this move. I really felt like God was present in all of this. And when I finished my fast, I felt this complete peace, moving to this new spot and on the reservation would come easily, is what I felt. And then nothing came easily. And for the first time in my life, I just couldn't say, oh well, no big deal. It was finally taking a toll on me, emotionally, physically. I thought I was good at living a surrendered life, and God showed me I needed to work on control. I needed to work on surrender. In 1993, Rich Mullins wrote this song that I still love, Hold Me, Jesus. He says the word surrender doesn't come natural to me. I'd rather fight you for something I don't really want than to take what you give that I need. And I've beat my head against so many walls. Now I'm falling down. I'm falling on my knees. So hold me, Jesus, because I'm shaking like a leaf. You've been my King of glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? You guys ever heard that song? See, it turns out I was really willing to preach about Jesus being peace. I was willing to speak to almost 1,000 Ugandans about Jesus being peace. And I was willing to let him be my King of glory, but I guess I wasn't really willing to let him be my Prince of Peace. I was willing to accept him as Lord as Savior, but I wasn't willing to fully surrender everything. And I thought I could. I thought I did. I thought I was surrendering it all. And I realized in this season of life that there were things I was still holding on to, certain issues of control. C.S. Lewis says that God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself because it is not there. There is just no such thing. And peace is only found in him, and it's found despite our circumstances. And so apparently God had to take me through a season, a really wild season, to work on this, to refine me through this, because I needed to work on finding peace. And I really felt like what Rich Mullins was saying there. I've beat my head against so many walls, trying to do it my way. This is a really dangerous thing. I wouldn't recommend anyone in this room to ever do this. But I was like, Lord, I'm just gonna open to a psalm, And Lord, I pray that the psalm I opened to really just hits me. I need it, Lord. And that's dangerous because you could open to a psalm of lament and it would not feed you properly. Oh, I'm getting close to time. I apologize. So I opened up to the Psalms, and I opened to Psalm 127, and right there it says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it build in vain. And I just started weeping. I began to feel like that caged animal that was finally starting to calm down. I began to realize that, I'm really stuck here, God. I am really stuck, and only you can get us out of the situation. So briefly, we had a company that we were working with for a new house because we were living in we lived in a tiny home for 4 years. So living in the double wide trailer is not terrible because we went from a tiny home to a tinier home, but it's for a season. And we had multiple companies back out on us, companies that wouldn't help us build a new home or an addition to our place on the reservation. We had one house that was ready to come. Everything was picked out, countertop, siding, you name it. And randomly that company backed out. And we're like, oh, okay, Lord, where are you in this? Not long after that, we found a new company that was half the price. We could go with a bigger house, and it was literally half the price or more than what the first company was. Like, wow, God, you're amazing. You were protecting us from that first place that we could barely afford. Then we couldn't find anyone to help build the first part of the house, the bottom half, because the top half was prefab, the bottom we had to build. And so, okay, God, we can't find anyone to build. What do we do? And then we found volunteers from First Baptist in Cook, Central Baptist in St. Paul, First Baptist in Two Harbors, who helped get our first level done. We're like, wow, God, you're so good. And then when the top part of the house was supposed to come, we thought it would be here before school started this year. And then it didn't arrive in September, and then there were delays, and it didn't arrive in October, and there were more delays. The thing we're living in was not ever meant to be lived in the months of winter. So that's been a challenge. And the house was delayed, and finally said, hey, it's going to come in January. And I was like, okay, great. We thought it'd be here by Christmas. And when it first arrived, it didn't fit down the driveway because the company didn't measure the curves of our driveway. So when we saw it on Highway 61, we're like, oh, Lord, you're so good. And then the guy comes walking up. He goes, it's not going to fit up your driveway. We're done. We're going home. The next time a crew came to set the house, the wind off Lake Superior was way too violent. They said, we're not setting your house. We're going home. So the third time the group came to set the house, they said, it's still not ideal, and it's windy, and we're going to give it a shot. So the house is a little crooked, and we're okay with that. The goal was more space, not a perfectly aligned house. But it was the third attempt, the night of the third attempt, each one of these attempts that the company was coming, I had so much anxiety that I knew the company was coming the next day to set the house, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat, that's okay. I can skip a few meals. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and then find out, it's not actually going to work. But the day that the house came for the third time, something different happened. The Lord had shown me his peace in that meantime. He had shown me what it means to rely on him. And I realized if the house didn't get set that day, it was no longer the end of the world. I did get set, praise God, and maybe the Lord was waiting for me to get to a place of complete surrender and say, I can't do this. If it doesn't happen, it's okay. So I want somebody, another volunteer, to open to Acts 12. Anyone? I hear people opening. Will anyone read it, though? Yeah. Oh, okay, right here. Okay, we'll get there in a minute. Acts 12, 1 through 8 in just a minute. So Jesus is sleeping on this boat. And I feel like there's only two reasons why Jesus could be sleeping on the boat. There's two options. One, he's completely exhausted from sharing with all of these people. He's sharing with crowds. He's speaking all day. And he is so tired that it says in Mark, he goes up, he finds a cushion. He finds a nice cozy cushion, and he's out. So he's really exhausted, and he's sleeping through the wind. He's sleeping through the waves. Or he's also just sleeping because he has such incredible peace during this time. He's resting because he knows he's doing the will of his Father. And he also knows that because he knows the will of his Father, this is not how he dies in a shipwreck. and that he has the power to control the storm because his Father is the one who made the storms. So why worry? So Jesus was either completely full of peace or completely exhausted, and I think it's somewhere in between there. And I think it's more so that he knew what he had control over. So why not take a nap? Let's read really loud Acts 12, 1 through 8.
It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals," and Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him.
Thank you. I'm a big proponent of this truth that a lot of us read the Bible too fast. If you ever grew up just like, I got to read the Bible to say I did it today, don't read the Bible just to say you read the Bible today. Take it slow. Read it verse by verse. Really process what each verse is saying. I've read this story many times as a kid, many times as an adult, and recently, in the recent months, it jumped out at me. The one thing that was happening here that was the weirdest thing is what's he doing in the prison? What? Sleeping. Again, here's the bad that's going on. James is just killed by a sword for following Jesus. He's got 4 squads of soldiers surrounding him. He's bound with 2 chains between 2 soldiers with 2 guards that are keeping watch on the prison door. The only good thing that's going on for him is that he knows that the church was in constant prayer, and the other good is an angel of the Lord shows up. So there's a lot of bad that's going on, more bad than good if you want to say the glass is half empty. But why is he sleeping? He's either completely exhausted or he has complete peace. And that really jumped out at me for the first time in just recent months. He's either just so wiped that he's just zonked, or he's in this terrible situation and he's got perfect peace. Now, I'm just gonna err on the side of this guess. I think he's got peace. Maybe he's exhausted too. But here's what we know about Peter is that he was with peace, and peace gave him a new name. He watched peace calm a storm. He briefly stood on water with peace. He watched peace show up to feed a hungry crowd with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then he goes and he denies knowing peace 3 times. He sees peace conquer death. He ate fish that was prepared on a beach, cooked by peace, after denying him, after denying knowing him. Peter walked and lived, and he got to know peace, the Prince of Peace. And I believe that Peter is in prison and he is sleeping soundly, probably snoring, because he got to know peace in a profound way. He got to see peace day in and day out. And he knew that regardless of the situation, knowing his friend was just killed, whether he is set free or killed, at the end of the day, he's going to know peace. So when the 3rd attempt of our house came, the night before, I just had complete peace because this was no longer a worry for me. I just knew that I was finally done. It's finally, okay, Lord, I can't do this. And I slept great. And I had peace. And I realized what it looks like in my life, what it really looks like to surrender to peace, to surrender to Jesus. I'm incredibly forgetful. I've got pretty bad ADD. And so I got to remind myself daily, constantly, hourly, how to surrender everything to experience his peace. As my friend told me, it was such great news that we were experiencing all of these terrible problems with our house issues because now I get to preach it and have lived it. You know, if Jonah hadn't been in the belly of a whale crying out, that's what God took for Jonah, was sitting in a belly to cry out to him, to pray prayers of power. If it hadn't been for a fiery furnace, we would not be talking about the ongoing stories of faith from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If Daniel wasn't surrounded by lions and the Lord didn't show up and hold their mouths closed, we would not have all of these great stories of God showing up through the experience. And so whatever you're going through, I don't know everyone's stories here, and maybe I'm preaching to myself today, but God had to put me through a good season of over a year of some real wild things to ask myself, do I actually believe what I preach, and do I trust the peace that's available from Jesus? God can take whatever scary situation we're in, and he can stop your mind if your mind is racing, if you've got thoughts that feels like they're out of control, if you can't sleep because there's so many things going on. I finally experienced that we can just say, okay, I'm done. I feel like whatever situation we're in, God's like, he's looking at that animal in the cage. It's just wild. He's just waiting for us to calm down. When we've finally surrendered, he's opening that door, and you get to experience freedom like you've never experienced when we know his peace. I think God was saying, would you just quit fighting me for 2 minutes? Would you quit banging your head against the wall so I can show up and show you what I'm up to? We're going to have the worship team come back up. And I'm going to pray here, and in just a minute we're going to partake in communion. So Father God, Lord, right now I just pray that you give us all patience, God. Father, that you give us all a peace, that you give us faith. Father, that to know that you are in control even when we can't see you. God, to know that whatever it is we're going through, that you are still present. God, give us the faith to know that our timing and your timing are two very different things. Father, I pray for everybody in this room right now, Lord God, that you would give us a peace that could cause us to fall asleep in the midst of a prison cell. Because we know who's in control. And God, I'm sure there's many in this room who've experienced something more difficult than going through of finding a house to live in. But God, whatever our journey is right now, Lord, I just pray that you would speak to it, speak into it, Lord. Father, remind us that you're the one who's in control, not us. God, I pray that we could all experience the absolute freedom, the profound freedom that comes when we walk daily in